One man, 100 guests, 1,000 drinks. Drinking with Jason.
Kenneth Cain, welcome back. It's been a while.
Thanks for having me.
Before we started recording, we were just talking about beer, and I don't know why we were doing it offline, but you were drinking Troegenator, and I have been killing that beer every Friday night at a local bar I go to. They have $3.75 happy hour, and I just love me some Troegenators there.
Oh, yeah, that's a great beer. I've been really into it lately. That and, like our local Giant. So the big thing in Pennsylvania lately is that our grocery stores can finally sell 6-packs.
I know. Every time I go home, I'm from Western PA.
Every
time I go back for Christmas or something, I'm like, where was this shit when I lived here?
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up in Illinois, and my siblings all are still out in the Midwest, Illinois and Wisconsin, and they've always been able to get beer in like convenience stores and grocery stores. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. Because, you don't have to go to a beer distributor and buy a whole case. You can get a 6-pack of mixed beers. But yeah, I found Troegenator, and I've just been drinking. I love that beer. That's a good beer. I've tried it. I tried this one that they have just recently. It's a wheat IPA, same place, the Troegs. Mm-hmm. And that was, it was more like, you know what it tasted like is a shock top kind of.
Okay. Like a summery kind of beer almost?
Yeah, like fruity, like that orange beer. What's that called? Blue Moon.
Okay.
And it wasn't that it was bad. It just was, coming from a Troegenator, which has a very, a good taste. Going to that, I was like, whoa, that's not what I expected. So I went back to Troegenator.
Yeah, I've been hitting the Troegenator, and since it's summer, I drink summer shandy. Have you had that?
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's people really love or hate that beer, but man, in the summer, I can just kill those things. It's just,
what is that, Leinenkugels?
Yeah, yep.
That's kind of what that Troeg one that I was talking about, that summer wheat.
Yeah, I wouldn't drink it after September, but in the hot season.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the PA thing. So I moved down to Maryland around 2006, I think. And I moved down here, and I could buy liquor, beer, and wine all in the same store, and I thought I was in heaven.
Yeah.
Now I go up to PA, and I could get it in the grocery store. I'm like, what the hell? Why don't I have this in Maryland now? So now Maryland is behind PA in a lot of this stuff. It drives me nuts.
I do like having everything in one place, so that's nice.
Can you tell I drink too much?
It's part of being a writer, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of my problem with staying home all the time. It gets me in trouble. Go. It's like, it's 11:30 at night. I could have one more. What's the problem?
And all your best friends are made up.
Yeah, exactly. So you had reached out through, I think, Crystal Lake. Is that right?
Yes.
And it was actually good timing because I haven't done this show like at all for the past year. I think I had one person on, something like that. I actually got really sick of dealing with authors. They are so freaking unreliable. And I would be sitting here in the stream waiting for them to show up, and I had one guy who didn't show up on me twice.
Oh, wow.
And it's just like, you know what? I'm so sick of this. Like, I don't make money off this, Yeah, so I just kind of stopped, and I was just talking with my wife about restarting this whole thing. She's actually really good at scheduling people, and I have no patience for dealing with anyone. So dealing with authors in particular is very bad for me. I end up telling people off I probably shouldn't be telling off. So we were just talking about relaunching this when I got your email, and I thought, hey, this is a good one to start up on. Since you're such a busy man, you have seemingly a shitload of books coming out.
Yeah, that's the one thing. My wife, Heather, is just so good at scheduling, so I don't miss those. Every time I get an appointment, I send it to her, and she puts it on a calendar, and then she always sends me a reminder. I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world.
This is exactly what she's doing. Yeah, she made a joint calendar on our phones. I get notifications when something's coming up.
Like, that's awesome.
And I am such an idiot. I'll get bills, and I'll just put it on the shelf for like 2 months, and I end up sending it in late. It's like, it's not because I don't have money. It's because I'm a moron, and I'm terrible at scheduling things.
Yeah, she's really good at like keeping me on schedule and not letting me forget. Like I was up there, it was like getting to be 10 till, and she goes, hey, you better get down there now. And I'm like, okay, I'm going.
Like, I got to get my beer first.
Yeah.
Now, does that help you be more efficient with your writing time too?
So she has summers off. So in the summer, usually I I have this willpower to where I can go in my office and lock myself away and stay there, like a 9-to-5 job.
Sure.
It usually ends up being, for me, I usually get up at like 6 and I go, have a couple coffees to become alive. And then once I'm in my office, I'm locked away in there until I wake up out of my stories. And, so often I'm missing lunch. I just miss everything. And she just lets me be, which is the greatest thing.
Wow. You do this every day?
Yeah. I mean, I try to. I mean, sometimes you get in a funk and I don't want to call it writer's block because I don't think that's what it is.
On me.
What's that?
I'm in a 2-year funk, essentially.
Oh, yeah. So it's like, like sometimes you just wake up and you're like, I don't want to write today. Or like today for me, so we moved closer to my mom. She's on her own to take care of her. And so I went over there and worked on some electrical work for her. Took the day off from writing yesterday and today to do that, and botched that up big time somehow, but we'll get it fixed. But, so sometimes sometimes I have things I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, but like, most of the time when I sit down, I just get in, like, whether it's writing a news story or, and I almost always start out trying to write a new story. So I have all these ideas written down, and I'll pick out like 2 or 3 of them, and I'll sort through them, try to piece them together, and I'll start, banging out, like, probably pretty early on, I'll bang out like 1,000, 1,500 words just to see if the story's got legs.
Sure.
If it does, I'll keep going. If it doesn't, I'll set it aside and I'll pick it up another day. But I almost always end up editing, editing projects that I'm getting ready to send out, or that I've, gotten new contracts on older work that I'm trying to, give a clean edit to and get them back out.
So you spend a huge portion of your day not actually putting new words down, but working on old words you've done, something like that.
Yeah, I think that what I do for my first draft, I do because I deal with a lot of chronic pain issues. So for my first draft, I'll just get out whatever I can. Okay. For instance, I have a novel that I worked on that I've been working on forever, entitled Construct. And the first, it's about 80,000, or it's about 50,000 words as it stands right now. But almost all that 50,000 words is in the first half of that book. And the whole second half of that book is just little 500-word paragraphs.
Oh.
Just to let me know so it's almost like an outline.
Sure. Okay. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone doing it that way. That's kind of an interesting thing.
It was just a really tough time. I was like out, and I was like, I'm going to get 500 words a day, and I'm going to get this book done. So I just forced myself to get through it. And, it's not something I would like say, hey, look at this. This is great, because it's utter crap. You know what I mean? But it has enough of the essence of the story there that I can go back and flesh out those scenes and, add in some, if I had foreshadowing, maybe I'll call that back to like echo it later on. So the reader remembers, and do some layering and some subtext, and, I'll flesh all that stuff out. And once I get it all done, then it goes to my wife, Heather, and she'll do a hard edit. And by hard edit, I mean, like, she puts notes like, this sucks. And
damn.
Yeah. Or she'll sometimes say, you suck. But, so she's cruel, but I've told her to be, and she's really good at that. And that's where I'll do like.
That's an odd compliment.
Yeah.
She's great at being terrible to me.
But that's the thing. Like, I don't want to hear what's great about the story. I want to hear what's bad.
Sure.
The only way I ever get better as a writer is hearing the bad things. And it's not like, I know everybody has an opinion, and it's not like I take all those things to heart. Like, when I get a rejection and there's notes on it, I consider that. It doesn't mean that I necessarily do that, but I consider that. It's one opinion. If I get like the same opinion five or six times, then I know, hey, right, this is definitely a problem.
I'm the exact same way. If I send something out to my beta readers, I always want their opinion on the story. Primarily, they find typos and things, and if I did something stupid, changed a character's name or whatever, which I think we talked about last time. But if they all tell me this part just does not work, or the beginning of this book is super slow and boring, then I know there's a problem. If less than half say that and the other half think it's fine, then I'm probably okay.
Yeah, like, last year I went to that Borderlands boot camp. I think we talked about that a little bit, that I was going to it. And I workshopped a story that at the time people were saying, this is your best short story. And, wow. I got there, and I was like anxious to see what kind of feedback I got. And about 50% of the people that what they basically do is they tear your story apart. Every person that's attending tears your story apart, and all the major people, the people that are hosting it, like the Monteleones and so forth, they're all like editing your story.
So this is not for the fair skin, the thin skin.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to have a little thick skin. But like here's what I've been told is my best short story, and about 50% of the people there got the story. Mm-hmm. And the other 50% of the people were like, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Okay. And I was like, wow. Okay. So I hit that note with, and I'd just been sending it to the wrong people. I hit that note where everybody was getting it, but it wasn't getting accepted anywhere. And I was like, I did something wrong. If I'm losing 50% of the readers on the story, then, something's just not working. And so I tore that story apart. It ended up becoming 2 stories. Now it might go back to being 1 story. I haven't decided.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you spend way more time on this stuff than I do. It's your take is so opposite of mine. I love hearing this. I basically do 2 drafts, a third draft after some people send me typos, and I kind of go through it one more time. And then I just shit it out onto the internet and move on to the next. So it's interesting.
That's one of the things.
Deconstruct.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think I get some criticism for. Like one of my friends, he's always like, write something new. Like for instance, I have my trilogy that we talked about last time. I got the rights back to that. I'm working on getting it published through a publisher, but just republished. We might even do like a little side story in the world. Okay. But I want to give him a clean edit. I mean, this is the first thing I wrote when I came into writing 10 years ago. So I want to give him a clean edit, and I'm like sitting there going, wow, I cannot believe I'm moving stuff all over the place. It's pretty intensive. And my friends, and my friend's like, why are you going back to this old stuff and re-editing it? And I'm like, because it's a story I wrote and I love, and I want to get it back out there. But at the same time, there's something about that process where I've picked up things about my writing, and I can almost pinpoint the problems. And then I come back to like a newer project after like working on that older stuff. And I do get a little bit more freedom, because I was more free with my words back then. Like using, to be and was a lot, mm-hmm. Back in the old days when I started, the old days, 10 years ago, when I started, I used those a lot, and it was very passive. And now I've gotten to the point where I strip so much of that out. But at times, I think that it's, I've read a lot of of my colleagues' works, and I think you can get away with probably more than I'm trying to get. You know what I mean? I'm trying to cut it all out.
No, I'm 100% with you. I started out using it a lot. Then I was like, I'm using this way too much. And I started focusing too much of my time on not doing it. And I think it was actually making my writing worse, because it wasn't flowing. I was so worried about sentence structure and things that, and I started reading Stephen King again. He's been putting out a lot of books. That dude uses was and were all the time. He's like the best writer ever. So I've been trying to relax on it a lot more and just focus on telling a story.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like everybody's got these lists of every author's got like a top 10 rules list, mm-hmm. and you can follow those rules till the cows come home. But what I think this is all part of the process for me. What works for me is going back to this old stuff and reworking it, and then go to the new stuff and reworking it. I'm defining my voice. I'm further defining it. Sure. I think I've found like the style of writing I like. But now I'm starting to, define the nuances of that writing style.
Sure. I think the last time we were here, you'd mentioned that you had a lot of self-doubt when you first started with your writing.
I did, and I still do. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, you send out a story and it gets rejected, and then, you send it out somewhere else and it gets rejected. And sometimes, when you're starting out, I think you send those stories out, it gets rejected 40 times, and you're like, this story sucks. But then, you get like a little bit more into it. You start getting notes. Sorry, I've turned on the fan, but it's probably too loud.
I can't even hear it. Don't worry.
Extremely hot. I can hear it. I'm gonna turn it on. If it's too loud, let me know. But you start getting notes.
I'm getting.
You hear that? Okay.
Wind shear on the mic, actually.
I'm just locked up in this room. It's like hot. It's like a sauna. But luckily, I got this to cool me off.
Oh, there you go.
But you start getting feedback on your stories, and when you start getting that feedback, you start going, I'm onto something here, and it's all part of the process of just finding your voice and redefining it until you get to something that editors like, or a majority of editors like. Like if you're only reaching 10% now, then you're still doing something wrong. You got to get to the point where you're reaching that that higher mark.
And you feel like now you're hitting your stride much more. I mean, you were just telling me you have 3 books this year, and then how many others planned for next year?
I have one so far. Well, I have others for next year, but there's no contract yet. But I have a contract for one in the spring.
So you have 4 under contract now.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good for that short amount of time.
Yeah, it was a busy first half of the year. I did a lot of editing on those books. And I'm still working on the one for the spring. So a lot of editing work. I finally finished the 3 for Crystal Lake.
Did you find that once you broke through and got a book accepted that it got easier for you? Because I've had a lot of authors tell me that.
It does, but there's other markets. There's other markets I want to crack. And some of those, I wouldn't say that they're tougher than Crystal Lake. I mean, Crystal Lake's a top-notch press.
They're doing really good things.
They are. And it's just that they have different editors. And, what might appeal to, like, editors of one press might not appeal to another. And I'm trying to figure that all out. I want to spread my wings a little bit and get into some of these other presses that I'm really interested in. Like, I have, like, a dozen targets, and I will just... I'm bombarding these dozen. They're probably like, oh, Christ, here's that Ken Cain guy again.
Yeah.
What the hell is he doing?
It's one of those things I really like. You see these publishers are starting to find a niche, and then they just, is it Severed who does all the monster books, or am I getting them mixed up with someone else?
No, it is. They do like those kaiju and the shark stuff. I think that's brilliant.
That's what people want that from them. That's what they sell. That's just such a great little niche. I love that.
Yeah, I have this note, actually. I have all these notes for kaiju stories, and I'm like, someday I'm going to write a kaiju novel and get it out there and see. Because I'd like to get into that market. That's a good market.
Yeah, I've never written anything like that, but I'm trying to hit basically all the different subgenres of horror along the way, so eventually I'll probably get there. And I remember you telling me that you had started self-publishing, but now you're really trying to just hit publishers. That's kind of your goal right now. Is that still what you're doing?
I've always been a little blended. I started self-publishing to get out. I was like, I'm just going to self-publish and be done with writing. Right. It's a tough business.
That is.
And it's like you said, it's not for the thin skin. And when you first start out, like, you'll send out a story, and like a second later, it feels like a second later you get that rejection. You're like, what the hell? Did they even read it? Right.
This is perfect. How could they not take it?
Yeah. And you have these dreams of grandeur where you're like, I'm gonna become rich. I'm gonna be the next Stephen King. Everybody's gonna buy my stuff. They're gonna love me. They're gonna make my stories into movies. And then, like, you get your first royalty check for like $5, and you're like, oh, okay.
Right.
So I didn't really know how it worked.
I can go to happy hour and get 1 beer.
Yeah. Yeah. So you suddenly know how it is, and then that's the harsh reality. And I was like, this is not going to work. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm taking care of my kids. I want to bring something to the table. Writing's not going to do it. And all these rejections just came in at once. All the stories I had sold, like 6 or 7, came back, and because the publisher went under, and I was like, oh Christ, I'm getting out of this.
That's horrible.
But then I got some good feedback from Gene O'Neill, who's a great guy, and he kept me in the game. And then after him, Mort Castle kept me in the game. These are my peers, and they took time out of their day to say something nice to me that wanted me to stick with it. And really, that's what kind of got me wanted to go to try to get into Borderlands, and then try to get into Crystal Lake, and then trying to get in another press. But I'm at that point now, a weird point where I'm starting to get rights back from books that I've had out for a long time.
Sure.
And some of those have weird rights to begin with, so I'm going to have to self-publish them.
Okay.
And
are these short stories or novels?
One's a novel. One's it's right now. It's out. It was originally Dead Civil War. Now it's United States of the Dead.
Okay.
I've gotten rights back. I'm rewriting that now on the side too, and so that's actually going to come out next year. I think maybe this year, maybe next year.
Stacking them up.
Yeah, that's just a new edition. It's going to be called Pack Animals now. It's the same story. There's not a lot changed. It's just edited to make it a little bit more clear. Taking out some of the fluff and making it more of a streamlined story.
Right. That makes sense.
I mean, I want to get the story back out there. I think it's fun. And a lot of people enjoy that one. And the publisher liked it, and obviously, and you got the rights back, and I'm like, I'm just going to redo it. So I am going to self-publish some stuff, and I think I'm just going to do it the right way. Get a good editor, get a good cover design, get good formatting.
Of course, basically, you're being a publisher.
Exactly.
You're not just throwing something up there and then not understanding why it doesn't sell.
Right. And, there's a lot of I know there are a lot of people call them vanity presses, and maybe my definition is slightly different. I think a lot of them are talking about for the love markets or markets where you get paid very little. Mm-hmm. But in my opinion, you're going through a publisher. I want an edit. I don't want you to just slap a cover on and throw it out there.
I think those are basically scams.
I do. And you see these ones now, and they're unbelievable. Only $10,000 to get your book published. Really? $10,000? That's all?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. For $10,000, you could do such a giant book release. You might hit the USA or New York Times list. You could buy so much advertising.
Right. And not only that, but you could hire, for a lot less than that, you could hire a class act editor.
Oh, you could pay for a killer audiobook with that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much you could do with that money, and I think they're just scams to get these people. They say everybody's got a book in them. Mm-hmm. And
no, they don't.
Well, they all do. It's just whether or not they can get it out, maybe.
And whether it's good is the biggest thing. Some of the story ideas, I have people tell me, and like, you should write this. You can have this, and they tell me the idea. Yeah. I'm like, that is the most nonsensical idea I've ever heard in my life.
I had somebody come up to me at a bar. And they were like, you know what you should write? You should write a story about a vampire that falls in love with a woman, a human woman. And then there's werewolves and
Twilight.
Yeah. I was like, it's like, you're telling me a story that's already been done. Did you see the movie? It's about the time the movie came out. I'm like, did you see the movie? It's in the theaters.
He saw a trailer and it just stuck in there subconsciously.
I
had somebody come up to me. It was when I was writing a zombie western. It's one of my best friends. I love this guy, but he told me this, and I just laughed in his face terribly. I was writing a zombie western, and there was a bunch of biblical stuff in it. And he read the first part of the first book, and he said, "Okay," because they got on a train at one point. And he said, "Is this train going to time travel? Time? What? No. What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I thought maybe it would go to Nazi Germany, and then you would have cowboys and zombies." And Nazis. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? No. And he was adamant. He's like, fine, I'll just write it myself. Please do.
Sometimes those out of those like weird ideas like that.
Oh,
I feel like just writing that story just to be like as a joke,
Seriously.
It would probably be funny as hell.
I still sometimes think about writing it just purely as a comedy. Like a Sci-Fi Channel movie kind of thing. But he was just describing this to me, and I thought he was joking with me at first, and he was dead serious. You need to write this book. No.
That's where, we were talking about Twilight. So we were watching Twilight. My daughter was really into him at that age. And it worked as the Twilight books worked as a good gap between that kind of YA horror to getting, and now she's into Stephen King. So I appreciate that about those books. So I'm not making
into reading. I appreciate that.
Exactly.
That's
exactly. Exactly. So I'm not going to criticize those books. I'm going to say they bridged the gap. But there was one scene in the movies. We're watching the movies together when she's very young, and she's having a baby, and she's like, I don't know if you saw, but she's like really super skinny, and all of a sudden she has a blood milkshake. And I just burst out laughing. I was like, it's a freaking blood milkshake. It's the greatest thing in the world.
Isn't that the movie where they Googled how to take care of a vampire baby or something like that?
So I'm like, I have this kid book that I did called When Vampires Eat Fast Food. I got the idea directly from that scene where It's a vampire that's going to like a fast food restaurant ordering like a bloody milkshake. I'm like,
man.
I did it for my kids to have fun with them and everything, all those books. But that idea just came right from there, and it was written as a joke. So
I love that kind of stuff. I actually have a really horrible YouTube show where I watch bad movies, and I got one on my desk right here. Somebody sent me this in the mail to do called Disco Godfather.
That sounds awesome.
The back says it's about angel dust and disco, and this dude who's the disco godfather kung fuing people on the streets to get rid of quote unquote the whack.
Wait a minute. I thought you said bad movies. That's an awesome movie.
Sounds amazing. But I've been trying. I have a friend I do it with, and I'm like, dude, we have to do the Twilight movies. And he thinks I'm nuts. I'm like, no, they are so hilarious when you watch them. They're so bad. I love them.
Yeah.
I watch. Yeah. Are there 4 of them? 3 of them? 4 of them?
I think there's actually 5. Or didn't they split one into like 2 or 3 parts?
Yeah, it's like the thing they do now. They split the last book. Yeah. I watched that whole series, and spoilers if anybody hasn't read or watched Twilight and you actually give a shit, and if you're listening to this podcast, you definitely do not. When they get to the end, and it was the whole giant fight where people were dying, and I'm like, wait a minute. This is pretty good. I'm kind of liking this fight scene. And it was all in someone's head. Movie's over.
Yeah.
Series over. What the hell kind of ending is this?
I kept joking around about the little girl's name. It's like Renesmee or something like that. So my daughter was really into him, and so I'm like joking every other scene.
Right.
Bursting out laughing, and she's like, "Dad, stop! It's not funny." I'm like, "It's hilarious."
It really is. I had something similar happen. I went and saw Winchester this year, the movie that came out with Helen Mirren.
Oh, yeah.
It was so bad. I just started laughing. Like at the end of the movie, the third act was so bad. I just started laughing. My wife got so mad at me because everyone was looking like, "What's this dude's deal? This is the worst movie I've ever seen in the theaters, maybe." And I saw Battlefield Earth.
Yeah, but my wife will like. She always jokes around because like we'll be watching like Ash versus Evil, and everybody in the house is like watching it, and a scene comes up where he's got this chainsaw and he's like cutting through someone and blood's going everywhere, and I'm, everybody's like that, and I'm laughing my ass off.
Yeah, those are hilarious.
I'm like, this is so funny. Are you kidding me?
Oh,
the head goes flying across the room.
Yeah, that's great.
But, I mean, I laugh a lot about movies like that. I mean, every horror movie is funny. I mean, let's be honest.
I get a good kick out of a lot. Most of the bad movies we watch, my wife likes watching bad movies with me too. Most of them are horror movies because they're made for $1.95. Some guy who runs a gas station thinks he can make a movie, and it's always a horror movie because they're cheap to make, and they're always complete trash. And I love them.
Yeah.
I actually end up importing a lot of movies. I have 2 movies coming from the UK now, like Roddy Piper movies from the 80s and 90s.
Oh, really?
Because they never
I didn't know he did any other ones.
He did a ton
really?
Of movies, and they're all terrible.
So They Live is like one of my favorite movies.
I love that movie.
It's got so many cheesy scenes, but it's just great.
It's a great movie. It really is. But these are not. And they're so bad, they never got released on DVD in the States, so I end up having to import them.
Oh, wow.
And they're so good. I have one coming with Roddy Piper and Billy Blanks.
Holy cow.
I can't remember what it's called. Something Revenge or
something. Billy Blanks, was he the guy that did Jim Cotta or whatever?
The Tybo guy, yeah.
Yeah, Tybo, yeah.
Apparently, he was a B-movie action star in the 90s.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
I'm very pumped for that.
Do you remember that movie, Jim Cotta? I just said
yes, with the gymnast dude.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
But it's got to be one of the greatest movies of all time because it's so bad.
When what are they called? Pommel horses or whatever they are? When the zombie people are coming after him and he just finds pommel horses in the middle of this little shit Romanian town or wherever he is. And he starts kicking them while doing... Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, I gotta rent that. That's a good one. That's one to show the kids.
Oh, I have that on DVD. I loved it so much.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah. It's so great. You can get it for like $1.95 on eBay. Nobody wants that shit, and that's gold to me.
Oh yeah, I love all those movies. I mean, some of them are just so bad that they're classics.
Jim Cotta, man, I forgot about that one. I gotta do a show on that one.
I remember renting that for the first time when I was a kid, and we were all sitting around. We were expecting something great, and it was so much better.
Yes.
Because you see him doing the flips, we're laughing so hard.
Even the whole premise of it doesn't make any sense. Like, we're going to get this gymnast to be a spy.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, and he's in the period clothes, with a super tight clothes. That's 10 sizes too small.
I remember he was trying to pick up the female love interest, and he just does a backflip just to impress her out of nowhere, and it worked. That movie's great.
Thousands of boys all over the United States that year were trying to do backflips to impress girls.
Totally.
Right? All kinds of head injuries.
Oh, man. I could talk about bad movies forever. I have just this list of movies.
Oh, yeah.
But I should probably try and get back on track a little more. But I do have to tell you, I found one. I got it on Amazon. Again, it was like, because you can send DVDs in the States for $3 in the mail, something like that. The media mail.
Yeah, media mail. Yeah.
So I usually pay $4 for these movies because they only want $1 for the disc, and it costs $3 to ship it. I found one called Future War. That if you like bad movies, just check that out. It's probably on YouTube or something.
I'll have to check it out.
It involves dinosaurs, time travel. It's a Terminator ripoff. It is so mind-boggling. And as far as I can tell, 3/4 of it was shot in a cardboard factory because they just have cardboard box walls that are supposed to be like, it's so good. If you get a chance, check out Future War.
See, that's what's great when you go through movies like that and you see like all these 1-star reviews and then you see the 1 5-star review. This is brilliant.
Yeah, that 1 5-star is me.
Yeah,
I'm always like, this is the greatest movie ever.
That's the movie.
Oh, jeez. So anyway, back to what we were talking about. What was the first book you have coming out? I think it was through Crystal Lake, right?
That one is actually, yes. So the first 3 are all from Crystal Lake. And the first one is actually out for pre-order now.
Okay.
It's a 99-cent pre-order. It's a novella. It's called A Season in Hell.
I like the title.
It's a slightly different story than I usually write. This one's more literary, dark literary. It's about a woman playing baseball in the minor leagues back in the 90s. Oh. And what she has to endure, and it's through the perspective of another rookie. So she's a rookie, and this other rookie is, he's coming up, and he she's just there, he's just there, and so he kind of sees what she has to go through, and it's about his growth, what she has to endure, and his growth as a human being.
Wow, that actually sounds really cool, and it's still a horror novel.
So it's horrific.
Okay. Sure.
So there are some things that happen that are really dark, and but it's very literary. It's not paranormal. He's not going back in time or anything.
This is Nazis, all time travel, cowboys.
Although Nazis in baseball, time travel, that sounds great.
Yeah, just get them on a train.
Yeah. But this one's a little bit more of a serious note, and it deals with a lot of the issues that we're dealing with in society right now, with equality and sexism and racism, and it's kind of on this wrapper, under this wrapper of baseball. I grew up playing baseball. I played at all sorts of levels most of my life, and I've coached most of my life. And so I have a good understanding of the game. And, there's a tribute to baseball in this story. So if people are a fan of the game, they're going to like that aspect of the novella.
Right.
But there's also this, the main story is, it's just got that wrapper of baseball, but the main story is something bigger and more intense. I actually just got an early review for it yesterday that Joe linked up, and it was, it almost brought me to tears. It was so nice.
Wow. And it's 99 cents on pre-order.
Yep, and then it goes up to $2.99 once it releases on September 7th.
See, that's something I like about small presses, that they're willing to try stuff like that. If you're with a big publishing house, the odds of them doing that are zilch.
I agree. And originally, so I have this collection coming out from Joe December 7th entitled Darker Days. You remember my one from last year was Embers. So Darker Days. Embers was written, most of the stories were written when I was like on an upswing with my chronic pain and illnesses. Okay. And Darker Days, a lot of those stories were written when I was on a downswing. And, so there's the light with Embers and there's the dark with Darker Days.
I like that.
So the two books were my first two collections were These Old Tales and Fresh Cut Tales. They kind of played off of each other these two play off of each other once again. And I had this novella I was working on. I had subbed it out a few places and it wasn't getting the attention I thought it should. And one of the last rejections I got had some good notes where and what I tend to do when I get a rejection that has notes that if it has notes, I'll take them in and I'll look at them and I'll consider it. And if it's something I feel is right, then I'll make that change or look into it. And this one, basically said, this whole thing's front heavy. And I was like, holy crap, it is. And so I chopped a ton of it, and something about it wasn't getting through. So I redid the whole thing, trying to make it more. Wanted to engage the reader at a different level than I usually do. So I was trying to achieve something different than what I usually do, and so I got it done, and I sent it to Joe, and I was like, hey, why don't we just include this with Darker Days? And Joe was like, yeah. And so I was like, I had this whole plan worked out with Joe, and Joe was like, listen, this is an awesome story, but it doesn't fit Darker Days. He's like, let's just keep them separate, and we'll do a digital edition of this, and that's it. And he's like, people will love it. And he had a whole game plan, like right away. He's like, we're going to do a 99% pre-order, get as many people to read this book as possible. This is something that needs to be read. I was like, oh, wow. And when you get a publisher that gets behind you like that, that's just, it's awesome.
That's one thing everyone has told me how much they like with Joe. I actually should get him on here and talk to him because I've talked to a ton of it. He sends all the authors his way, which I like because then I have to do no work reaching out to people. But everyone has seemed to really appreciate the way he does things. And I'd say it's pretty evident it's working. It seems as if the business is growing. The names I see appearing through them have been getting bigger.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing is, he's very easy to approach. He's very easy to throw ideas at. Like I had an idea just recently that I threw at him and he said, no. But, that I appreciate the fact that he allows me to come, I came to Adam and I said, hey, I have an idea. Would you mind if I run it by you? Sure. I run it by him and he's like, no, that's not going to work. But he gave me that opportunity to run an idea by him, which is really cool. And sure. I don't know that a lot of small press publishers offer that. And I don't know that he offers it to everyone, obviously. You have to have a rapport with him and everything.
Of course.
But, that's just a cool thing because you never know. And this is what I said so the second book I have coming out from Joe is Tales from the Lake Volume 5. And one of the things I said in a recent interview is that, I've tried to read even the stories that didn't start in the right place. They should have started 2 or 3 pages in or they just didn't make sense coming off. Mm-hmm. I tried to read those stories all the way through to get a good sense of the story because you never know when you're going to miss something. So there could be an idea there that you can mine and make better and improve upon and really do yourself a favor by taking the time to read that little extra bit. And that's what Joe does. I mean, same thing, you never know when there's going to be an idea that is the good idea. So he likes to hear him, he hears him out.
Your approach to me sounds almost more like a screenwriting or a filmmaking approach where you send it out to people, you get opinions, and then you change things and you adapt and then you send it out and then you tweak and you, it's so different from mine. I really like hearing. No, I honestly, I like hearing the different way people do things.
But you know what it is?
Good.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you struggle with after you make so many changes other people want that you feel like it's not your voice as much anymore? Or do you welcome it because you feel like it's making the story stronger?
So it's not so much that I'm catering to those changes or those suggestions. So I'm not like when I get a suggestion that says like the voice of the main character is not coming through. Like I'll take that and I'll go, okay, this is somebody that didn't connect with the main character. And then I'll try to look at why didn't they connect with the main character? Is the main character a male and the editor was a female and there was just some disconnect because this is an issue that males typically go through? Or is it a female and I didn't do a good job at getting, and the editor's female and I didn't do a good job of portraying that? Or, so I look at all those elements to see if I feel like I'm on par. And, I think that generally speaking, like when I send a story out, I feel like it's done. But sometimes what I think it is that you get that story back unfortunately, sometimes 4 years later,
Right.
I had a rejection recently that was 4.5 years. We're closing a shop, but my story's been on.
They're closing shop, so they just went through their filing cabinet and just started sending out stuff they forgot to send out.
Yeah, my story was shortlisted for 4.5 years. But then, I get that story back and I go, oh, wow, 4.5 years. So I'm seeing it for the first time in a long time. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go through and just reread it and edit it and see if everything makes sense. And I don't know what it is. You put it away for a while and you come back to it and then all of a sudden it makes sense. You see that line better going through the story. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, 100%. I do it with all I actually don't go back and read my old work anymore. Unless for some reason I'm writing a sequel or something. Because the first thing I want to do is start cutting it up.
Exactly.
And I'm like, no, that is done. That's published. That story is what that story is. I'm not George Lucas.
Yeah.
I'm going to let that go. But it's hard. And people ask me questions about a book, and I'm like, dude, I don't even remember that character, let alone, what storyline you're asking me about. But, so I'll go back, and if I'm looking it up to see if I can figure out what they're asking me about, I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. How did I write this? So I just try to stay away from it, because otherwise I'll end up just doing it forever.
And that's the thing. That's where I'm at now. Like, I have these old books that I'm, putting out new editions of, and I'm going through them, and I'm trying not to change too much because I don't want to invest a ton of work into a book that I've already published. At the same time, if I get a publisher for the trilogy and the deal works out that I'm working on, I want them to be something better than what they were, something special. And I want when I've already have these ideas working for these side stories. I want those side stories to fit in well. So it's really hard because my writing style 10 years ago, where I don't know that I took things as serious as I do now. And you have a good sense of like what I put into a story. I do a lot of editing, a lot of thought into all the aspects of the creation of a story. And it's hard to go back to that early work where I did not put that work in.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, gee, I gotta put some of it in. You know what I mean? So it's hard to draw that line. Luckily, I'm able to make it through them pretty quickly and get them out the door. But
yeah,
I have other novels that I want to get to too that are already written that I need editing that nobody's ever read before. And so spending too much time on that old stuff. Oof.
You know what I found? It's weird, and I'm sure it's just with the way I write or whatever, but the stuff I write the fastest, a novel I wrote in a month, sells better and ends up reviewing better than something I spend 6 months on. I don't know if it's because I nitpick and I take too long and it ends up not flowing, whereas when I'm just in the groove and I just bang out chapters, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but most of the stuff I crush quickly does really well. And if I spend a lot of time on it, I think it's just the way I write. But
it could be. And that's the thing is like, so with me, I'm always learning new stuff. Like for me, writing is a never ending class. You're just going to continue to learn. My only goal is to write a better story today than I did yesterday.
No, I completely agree. And there are even external things that people don't think about, just with the way our culture changes over time. I mean, if you think about what Twitter and social media has done with the way people read, if you're writing giant 4-page paragraphs, no one under the age of 35 is going to want to read that. They're just not. They're used to reading little snippets.
Oh, yeah.
So I've even adapted the physical structure of my writing, my paragraphs, and my dialogue, because I want to reach a different audience, and I feel like the audience is changing the way they're reading. And
not only that, but so a lot of factors, and I know that he said he didn't want to talk about this, but I'll just touch on it briefly. Like Dead Civil War or United States of the Dead, it's basically when I wrote it, none of this was happening in the United States, but it was the whole story is about the Republicans versus the Democrats going to war and creating a civil war. Okay. And when the book came out, it got really good reviews and everything. But just recently, under the new climate, I got a review like, hey, why did your political views have to come through? And I was like, what, my political views? Right. What are you talking about? These are my characters' political views, and I'm trying to make them different. And
don't you love that when you get accused of thinking the way one of your characters do?
Right, but it's the climate that's different nowadays. And so I'm like as I'm going through this, I'm like, man, I should tone this down a little bit because, and I don't want to hide anything. I don't want to, I'm not trying to hide it. I'm just like, I could see where this might nowadays be taken a different way than it was in 2013.
Sure.
And so, it's that kind of process. And that takes a lot of thought. And you want your stories to be timeless as well. And so the way I had written it in 2013, maybe it didn't adapt so well to now, or maybe even in the future. So I'm trying to make it a little bit more believable for a period of time. For instance, the cell phone thing, we write stories back in the early, in the late 1900s, 1999, you write a story.
Yep.
And what was a cell phone then? Like very few people had them. It was like a brick.
Yeah. Rich people had them.
And now everybody has them.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like it's the question of, do you want to go back and make your old stories more palatable for today, or do you want to make your new stories palatable for today? And that's something I always struggle with. And I try really hard not to go back because I want to just, what, I don't like the way I wrote this, but I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to make my next book not have that, is the way I try to do it. The problem is I haven't been writing books that much. so in
I'm the
practice,
same way. I'm the same way, but I will say that like some of the best money I've made in writing has been off of reprints.
Really?
And yeah,
reprints with a publisher, or when you self-publish it afterwards?
Oh, with a publisher.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, there's some really good reprint markets out there. I mean, you have to research a little bit, but some of them pay really well. I mean, I'm talking when I started out, maybe I got $0.01 per word for some of these stories, or $25. And, I have some stories that are reprints that have made, a few $100 for me. And I'm like, wow, I couldn't be more thrilled.
Yeah. For something you did years ago. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's beyond, pro rates. So I think those stories, when you look at those ones that are like that succeed for me, they have that timeless factor. A cell phone or a regular phone doesn't play into it at all. So I don't have to worry about that. You know what I mean? Does that, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Now, what if, say one of your stories blew up, the New York Times bestseller, one of your books.
Oh.
Would you want to go back 15 years later and alter it to adapt it? Or do you feel like it's so much in the public mindset, in your canon, or however you want to put it, that you don't want to alter it? You don't, like if Stephen King went back and rewrote The Stand, people would flip out.
They would.
So at what point do you feel like it should have been
the thing. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I actually think A Season in Hell is like the best thing I've ever written. So I think it has that kind of potential. And nice. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a great story. And I don't know how, it's one of those ones that I look back at and I go, how did I write that? Because if I could tap into that, right. I would write them all like that. But it's one of those things where, like, right now I could not see changing it. But then I know that there are writers like out there, and I can't think of a good example of this. But they wrote a novella, and then it took off, movies, everything, and then they rewrote it into a novel.
Sure,
I could see that happening.
So basically, you're basically making a new work at that point, right?
Right. So I could see something like that happening, where you expand on the world. But I don't know that you would change the plot.
You don't want to be George Lucas, right? You don't want the whole world to hate you.
Right.
Because you're trying to update something everyone thinks is perfect anyway.
Exactly. And part of the reason why A Season in Hell ended up being the word count it did is because the story was done. Now, in at this time in my career. In the future, who knows? I mean, maybe I look at that story and I go, wow, I missed this, I missed that. And,
Sure.
But right now, this is the story that it is. And so I don't want to go back too much. I mean, I'm trying to break away from that, going back. But something about that has redefined like my writing style and allowed me to be a little bit more free with my words.
Sure. It's making you a better writer in future works.
I think so.
No, that makes sense. And my first work was a novella. I published it. And I really liked the character, and a couple years later, I decided I want to write a sequel to this. And I went back and read it. I'm like, I can't write a sequel to this because it's dog shit. And I was just imagining, I'm not even going to try to push this. I'm not going to advertise it. And if I'm going to write sequels, the sequels are never going to sell because the first one sucks. So I ended up pulling that one down and rewriting it as a full-fledged novel. So I never fixed it in the way I wanted and republished it under the same name and the same. I just renamed it, retitled it, expanded it by over double, and then republished it. And now that's my best-selling work.
That's sometimes how it works. I mean, it's interesting. I have this story I wrote called Left Out. For some reason, I had this high school baseball coach that hated me. I have no idea why. So I wrote this like first person, like, thanks.
You're welcome.
So I wrote this first person thing about all the stuff that he did to try to like get back at me for who knows what. I have no idea why.
That's weird.
Yeah, it was a really bizarre thing. Like I'm talking about the guy wrote like a 6-page dissertation to my college baseball coach why he should not have me on the team.
Jesus.
And like lying, like saying stuff like I did drugs and all this, I robbed banks and stuff like that. And
That's
I was like,
maniacal.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm there with my mom and I'm like talking to my college coach and he's reading this thing to me. And I'm like, I never did any of that. I go, what is that guy's deal? And, of course he believed me and I made the team and everything and screwed it up later, but that's a whole other story.
So he was right.
but I was like that. I've always held on to that. I was like, that would make a good story. And I put it out there and instantly I had all these reviews, like where it was called Left Out. And people were like, they were really, I had equated it to like how modern Little League sports are, where sometimes the parents don't have the kids' future in mind. All they care about is winning.
Right.
And so I tried to equate it.
They're living through their children.
Yeah. So when I wanted to win baseball, I went out and got my 35-year-old ass out there and played baseball and injured myself all the hell and had fun. I didn't live through my kid. I did it myself. I let my kid have his own memories. And too many parents are trying to live these memories through their kids, and it's just a bad thing. So I was trying to equate what happened to me with this experience with this coach to my son and his struggles. And, there were a lot of people that got it and they were like, wow, this is great. Thank you. This is exactly what's wrong. And then there were the people that were like, oh, everybody wants a trophy. Everybody wants a trophy these days. And I was like, Jesus.
Of course.
So, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take it down for now. It's one of those stories that's set. I'm going to rewrite it at some point, maybe make it a more fictional piece and try to do this like same thing like I did with A Season in Hell, try to make it more of a dark literary piece and see if I can make that work better.
That's an interesting take. How did you self-publish that?
I did.
That's how you were able to just take it down.
So for a while there, I was self-publishing under 2 other names, Samantha Quick and Homer Clark.
Oh, Homer Clark.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was trying what it was is I wanted to do traditional publishing, but I also wanted to dip my feet into self-publishing to try to learn the aspects of it. I was considering opening up my own press at the time.
Right.
And
which is so feasible nowadays. It's crazy.
Oh, it is. And maybe that's what's wrong with it. And I just looked at it and I said, this is a lot of work. I want to be a writer. I want to do those other things too. I want to edit. I want to make book covers. I want to format. I want to do all those things too. But I want to primarily write. And I knew that if I was going to become a publisher, that that aspect was going to go away in large.
And it does, and that's something people don't even understand. It's actually a problem with self-publishing. You mentioned it's too easy to make a press. It's too easy to self-publish, and people screw it up, and that's why it has the stigma it does.
I agree.
People don't do it the right way. So the last guest I had on here was Jasper Bark, which was a while ago now. That's crazy.
He's so fun.
I love that guy. He and I get hammered every time he's on here. But he's also, I believe, only traditionally published. So talking to him is interesting because I'm only self-published.
Okay.
I've never even submitted to a publisher. I've had publishers try to buy my books when they do well.
Yeah.
But I have a number because I know exactly within a few $1,000s of how much my books will make over a 5-year period. And if they're not hitting that number, why am I going to go with you? I've got this down, So it's always interesting to hear different people's perspectives. This is like how I pay my bills. This is what I want to do. And I'm also a control freak. But some people just want to write. They don't want to be fucking with the cover. They don't want to learn, oh, you know what? Amazon updated their Mobi standards, so I need to figure out the best way to format, or this program updated that I used to format, and now I can't get accepted in Barnes & Noble. They don't want to deal with that stuff.
Right.
And that 100% makes sense. So I like that now we have so many options that if you just want to write, you can do it, particularly with all these presses. If you just want to write kaiju stories, guess what? There's a press that's going to pay you to do that if you're good.
That's right.
So the way you take editor's notes and try to, okay, everyone is saying, all these editors are saying this, I need to adapt this story. I actually do it through reviews or sales. So if I...
Right, same here too. I do that as well.
Yeah, if I release a book and I'm only getting 3 stars on it, something's wrong. I don't know, and then I have to kind of figure out what it is. And it's the same thing. I released a book, I think it was my last novel I released, and it wasn't selling well. So I just asked my readers, what's the deal? What aren't you liking, or what aren't,
which is a freedom that we have nowadays.
Yeah.
That we have.
And it turned out my advertising campaign was horrible, because when I sent it out to more people, it ended up selling better. So, but that was a valuable lesson. Like, I screwed up the release. So
yeah, and then you only get one release too. I mean, I have one a Lexan that I wrote under the Samantha Quick name, and so all the Samantha Quick titles used to be erotica at one point.
I remember you telling me about that last time.
Yeah, something happened. Like, this character popped up, this little girl, and I was like, I can't do erotica anymore. And I kind of stalled on the project, so I put them aside. And like a year went by, and I was like, I'm going to rewrite them all, take out all the erotica, write them under my own name, and I'm done with all these pseudonyms, because it was getting.
That's so much work.
Yeah, on top of being a publisher and then 2 other people, and then having people like email you and send you dick pics, which, come on, guys. I had guys sending me dick pics, which was ridiculous.
Do you just have a folder saved on your computer? If their name ever pops up, you're like, oh, I got this guy.
It was mostly like nobody. I don't even know him, but I was just like, this is just stupid. I can't control 3 different entities. I'm going to come under one. And this book I wrote, the novella I wrote, Lexan, it was supposed to be my. So I wanted 3 books under that pseudonym. I was trying to write strong female lead characters, and Lexan was supposed to be my James Bond. She will use a man or a woman to further her cause, and without even care. Trying not to get emotionally attached. All she cares about is being a badass, and
I like it.
Taking out the bad guys. So I was like, oh man. So I rewrote the whole thing, took out the erotica, and the thing was doing great as erotica. The second I took it all out, that thing tanked. In my very first review, 1 star, and I was like, geez, well, there you go.
That's how you learn. It really is. My first review from the first thing I ever published was 2 stars, and I thought, well, I just wasted 6 months of my life trying to learn how to be a writer. I guess I'll just go get a job, but then some better reviews came in, and then that was the book I actually revisited later and realized it's complete dog shit, and the 2-star review is correct.
Yeah.
So that was your... you mentioned the 2 books now, right? A collection and your novella? Right.
And then there's Tales. So there's the collection, Darker Days, and the novella, A Season in Hell. And then the 3rd book coming out from Joe is a anthology that I edited, Tales from the League, Volume 5.
So you edited it, and he's publishing it.
Yep.
Now, how did you get to that arrangement?
So it was an interesting thing. Like, I just gotten back from Borderlands boot camp, and I came home to edits for Embers, and I was like, oh man, I tore through these, and I looked at them, and I learned so much at Borderlands boot camp. I cannot promote that place enough. They are professionals, and you're going to walk out of there having more confidence in your editing abilities.
Do they do this every year?
They do. And it's in Baltimore, and it's wonderful.
I was surprised I'd never heard of it, but then again, I don't leave my basement, so I wasn't that shocked.
So Peter Straub was at the one that I went at. He was every year they have like a guest. I think every year they have a guest writer. It's been Jack Ketchum in the past, and
I think you said Paul Wilson was at yours, right?
Well, F. Paul Wilson's one of the mainstays.
Oh, he's there every year.
Yeah, and Ginger Buchanan and I forget his name. God, I'm sorry. I'm having a brain fart on the other guy. And Tom Monteleone.
Been drinking for a while. Who cares?
Yeah.
You're forgiven.
But they basically go through your manuscript and they edit it for different things. So like Ginger is on editing. She like goes to editing, and Paul Wilson went on the dialogue this time. I don't know if they mix it up every year or what, but he sticks to dialogue, and Tom was on plot, so he stuck to plot. So you're going in there and learning quite a bit. And I came out, a little shaken for like the first 2 weeks, and I had the edits for Embers, and then finally it just kind of came to me, and I was like, listen, Joe, I'm going to redo everything. It's like, there's going to be a ton of edits. Don't be shocked. He's like, okay.
Is the book he already accepted?
Yeah. And I'm like, it's going to make it better. Don't worry about it. And I went through and edited the hell out of that thing in the next couple weeks and, got it up to a better part than what it was at. So I'm thankful for that. But when I was done, he just was like, hey, how would you feel about editing Tales from Lake Volume 5? And I was like, and I've been offered other anthologies in the past, and I've always turned them down because I didn't have confidence in my ability. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna force myself to do it. It's something I'm uncomfortable with. I'm gonna do it, and
so
I'm glad I did.
So you're editing an anthology. What is your job?
So for that one, it was going through story submissions. 715 submissions for that one.
Jesus.
Yeah, in 2 months.
No.
So I was getting up, and I was trying to do my own. I had things that these 3 books. I mean, the other 2 books. Darker Days and A Season in Hell that I was working on during this, trying to get those to Joe, and then I have this trilogy I'm rewriting, trying to work on at the same time. So I'm doing my own work, and then I have these stories coming in, like 20, 25 a day, sometimes more. And I'm trying to get through these, reading these stories. So it was literally like I was getting up at like 6 o'clock in the morning every day. And then I would work until like 5 and have dinner. And then I would like sit down while my family watched TV and read all night. My family was great about it. I mean, I've worked pretty much, all my waking hours other than eating dinner.
So would you say the vast majority of the work is just sifting through everything and making your choices?
It was hard, and I think part of the reason why it was harder for me than perhaps other editors for the series is because I'm on the 5th one. So many people have been rejected for the 1 through 4, including myself. So I think that you get a better understanding of what the editors are looking for. But not only that, you start to realize, hey, I can't just float a trunk piece through to here.
Sure.
And I did have that. I had and there were obvious ones like, a submission call that just happened like a month before, and it was such a specific submission call. And here this story comes to me, I'm like, oh God, come on.
You could put a little effort in.
Yeah. But but it happens. And I've done that. Everyone does that. You have these stories you write, and you want to get them out there, and you're trying to find ways. But
so if you pick them, do you then send them to Joe and then he approves them, or what you picked is what it is?
Nope. I picked. So I picked a lot of stories to shortlist. The large majority of the stories that I received were excellent. It's so good that I'm seeing on Facebook now those stories being accepted at pro markets elsewhere, or high paying markets. Maybe not pro, but high paying markets elsewhere.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, and I'm psyched about it because I had to reject that story because it didn't fit, and it's getting accepted at a good market elsewhere. That makes me happy. I don't feel as bad,
sure.
But I want those people to succeed. But I picked the stories, the 25 or so stories that work best together in my mind, like what I feel. I have a pretty good sense. I set it up a little bit like my collections, where the stories have a thread through them. I want it to have a thread and kind of gel a certain way and work together. It's an open theme horror anthology, and I still want those stories to tie in somehow. So that was hard. But yeah, I accepted them, and then I edited them, and basically I sent it to Joe all ready.
So then he does the copy edits or whatever?
I did everything, and then it goes to proofreaders and beta readers.
Holy cow.
Yeah, he has a great process. Small presses having proofreaders and everything to kind of, go in and catch the last details. And
so then I'm curious, what is, tell me to shut the hell up if you don't want to go into it, but what is a deal for something like that? Does he pay you up front? Do you get a percentage of the royalties? How does that work?
So it's a percentage of the royalties, and not, but it's not always about the money. I mean, that's the important thing. Like, so when I've always said this, and you could go back and even find it. I've always said that if you're going to go with a press, because I've self-published, and I know the advantages of self-publishing. If you're going to go to a press, they should have to offer you something above and beyond what you can do yourself.
I 100% agree.
So I can make my own covers. I can format. I can edit. I can write. I can publish. I can do all that stuff.
For a higher percentage.
Right. But what I can't do is get the audience that Joe has. And Joe has a great audience. And so that has been above and beyond. And he has a great rapport with authors out there. So I had
a percentage, and then you also you get access to his audience, and you also get access to these authors that you're dealing with through the anthology.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like, I want my sales to improve. I mean, obviously, I want to make a living off of this, but I also want to write that better story and spread my work out into new venues and everything. So. That's the one thing I think that small presses can give you that you can't do yourself. They can give you a new audience.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's why you go on podcasts.
Exactly.
You want to access a different audience.
And that's the whole thing. Is it's not like always about the money. I mean, it's not about getting a get rich quick scheme. It's about just trying to get your stories read. And
I mean, if you're doing short stories, it's not about getting rich quick.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That
but
ain't gonna happen.
Even novels, though. I mean, novels. I mean, being a writer is not the most lucrative job out there. I mean, obviously there are much better jobs, but you write stories for a reason. It's not always about the money. It's about getting those words read and having to make an impact. Like I told you, this review I got yesterday almost had me in tears because he got it. He got what I was trying to do.
Sure.
And I was blown away by it. Hey, I made contact.
Yeah.
That's almost what it's like. You're traveling to another planet, putting that, sticking that flag down, and they get it. The aliens get it.
There are few feelings better than when you read a review for one of your books and the person 100% gets what you were going for. Above the people who are 5 stars, loved the action, the pacing was great, this was so scary. But the guy who gets your main character or gets the subtext you put in, like this one woman sent me an email once, and she totally 100% got the main character in one of my series, and it was just like, how many signed books can I send you? What is your address?
I had one. So I created, like I said, all these kid books. I self-published all the kid books for my kids, and they got such a kick out of them. I illustrated them myself, I wrote them myself, I self-published them, and they got such a kick out of them. I was like, I'm going to put them out there, and then the whole thing at Sandy Hook happened, which was terrible.
Yeah, it's rough.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make them all free. All the kid books are free for however long. I think I said 2 weeks or whatever. I was like, I'm going to make them free as long as I can, because right now parents are going to deal with this. Little kids are going to be around while their parents are watching the news. I'm going to give little kids something to read while their parents watch the news. Take their mind off of it so they don't have to see it. And, I just did it because I just felt like it was the right thing to do.
Felt like you had to do something.
I wasn't trying to make money off of it. I'm giving it away for free. I'm not making any money off of it. Somehow word got back to one of these Sandy Hook teachers, and she sent me this message, thanking me and everything. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's awesome. She's like, we're rebuilding our library. Would you mind sending them some hard copies? So I sent them like all these hard copies. I was like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. And that is why we write, I think. Like, that feedback, even though it wasn't a review, it wasn't money, it was just a nice thing, and it worked out great. And those kid books, I mean, they're just fun. You know what I mean? Right. That's why I did them. I've literally given them away like every time there's like a mass shooting, which seems like all too often. So it seems like I'm giving them away for free all the time. But I've made them free for so often during these bad times when all the news is like filled with, because I know the parents are going to have the news on 24/7, and there's going to be little kids around. So I was like, I'll just give them something to do during that.
That's incredible that it got back to one of the Sandy Hook teachers. I'm always tweeting at Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he never responds.
You know what it was? Is it was somebody on Facebook was friends with one of the teachers, and in another school, not the one that it happened at, and it just kind of got. So it was an incredible thing, and would I have got that without social media and without self-publishing? No. So
right. No, that's really
so cool. That was cool. Yeah, it was a cool story.
Now, before we get out of here, I have something even more important I want to ask you. What is your favorite bad movie of all time?
Favorite bad movie. You know what I really like is you ever see the one? What was it called? The Explorers?
No, I don't know what that is.
It was like the 4 boys that they find this this computer program, and they build this like spaceship and go into space.
Oh, 1985?
Yeah.
Directed by Joe Dante, the guy who did Gremlins?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's so the whole first half of the movie is pretty good. I mean, it's
how
good.
do I not know what this is?
It's once they get up into space that's bizarre, and you kind of like wah wah wah.
Ethan Hawke, River Phoenix. How do I not know this movie?
It's great.
Okay, all right, adding it to my list right now.
Yeah, you'll see. It's the whole first half of the movie is awesome. Okay, and it's just the second half is so tacky.
Okay.
I mean, so tacky, like a bad Saturday Night Live skit.
I'm excited to see this now. I'm not gonna lie.
But the whole first half is so amazing, and you're not going to be disappointed. The whole first half, you're going to be like, "This is the greatest movie ever written." Then halfway through, you'll be like, "Oh, okay."
All right, okay, I'm excited now.
Yeah.
My buddy had never seen Van Damme movies, so I introduced him to Bloodsport first.
Oh, that's a great one.
He was like blown away when they had the dude from Africa acting like a monkey and jumping in trees and chopping coconuts. He was like, "How the hell did this get made?" Like, dude, it's Van Damme. And then I showed him Kickboxer, and he was confused. He thought it was like the same movie I was showing him with just different scenes because the storyline is identical.
Which, like, every one of his movies is.
Exactly. And next up, I'm going to show him Lionheart, which, again, it's Jean-Claude Van Damme gets involved in an underground fighting ring and has to win to make money or save his sister or whatever.
You got to break it up with Time Cop, which is like one of my favorite movies.
It's actually a much better movie than the rest of his stuff. There's good stuff in there. Bloodsport, Kickboxer, and Lionheart are just the same movie. They figured we made $15 million with that last movie. We're just going to do it again. We're going to change it.
And then there's like a dozen other movies with other actors that are the same movie. Like, I forget what they're called. What was the one with Julia Roberts' brother? What's his name?
Oh God. Best of the Best? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Best of the Best too.
Best of the Best is on our list. He has not seen that one either. And I keep telling him, wait till you see Eric Roberts' performance in this movie.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, I love all those movies. We were talking about that the other day because me and my brother, we grew up watching I don't even think they have it anymore. Kung Fu Theater.
Sure, I know what you're talking about.
So he's like 11 years older than me, and so every Sunday this is when I lived in Chicago. We'd go watch Kung Fu Theater and like early Sunday afternoons. And I was telling my wife, I wrote a story, and in the story I referenced one of the movies I saw where this guy goes, and he goes, and his hand goes through the guy's head. And then you see his fingers go like this at the other end.
Oh.
And I've referenced that. She goes, "That can't happen." I go, "It did. It happened in the movie. It's the greatest movie ever."
Was the whole movie super gory?
I can't even remember, but it was the greatest scene I've ever seen.
I feel like that's called the story of Ricky Lee, or the story of something like that. Story. Oh God, what is that called?
But it was so great because it wasn't enough that he poked his hand through his skull, which is physically impossible, but he wiggled his fingers through the other side, and I was like, oh.
Ricky O, the story of Ricky, I think is what you're talking about.
It might be, yeah.
I think there's a part where he punches at a guy, and the guy, like, their fists hit, and he just punches through the guy's fist.
It was like wacky stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
But that's the thing. You can't get that anymore. That kind of entertainment just is not available.
So there is a guy who's making movies now. His name is Neil Breen. He's making movies out in the Las Vegas desert. And you can only buy them through him. He completely makes them
geez.
himself. You buy them from his website. Except there's one. Do you have Amazon Prime?
No, but I have to get it. I have to get it.
So I think he has one on there. This movie will change your life. It's called Fateful Findings. It's on Amazon. Oh, this title's... He took it down. Damn.
Oh, jeez.
If you can find a Neil Breen movie... So it doesn't have all the gore and everything.
I'm going to jot it down.
But in every movie, he plays God or a sentient AI from the future or whatever. But when he's playing AI, he descends to the earth and he has a motherboard on his chest and like RAM chips on his arms to show he's a computer. It's unbelievable.
Awesome. Yeah. That's like the thing. Like one of our greatest bad guys is Darth Vader. And that costume was awesome in the 70s. But now when you see it, like I saw the Prelude one that they came out with God, I forget.
Rogue One, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Rogue One. So at the end you see him and you're like, oh, it's Darth Vader. And then he starts walking, he's got that goofy little Atari looking thing on his, you're like, oh, it's Darth Vader.
It's the future.
Yeah, it's the future. It's the Atari 2600 future.
Oh, yeah. I love all this stuff. And the older, the better. And I keep finding these movies. Like I said, one of my listeners on another podcast I have sent me this in the mail because she knows I like bad movies. I'm like, Disco Godfather? This is so up my alley. I'm so pumped. I can't wait.
You know what I did is I went out and, so you'll remember this one, Greatest American Hero.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like telling my kids, I was like, this is going to be the greatest thing you've ever seen. I rented the a whole first season. I was like, you guys are going to love this.
There's no way they like that.
Oh, and I hated it. I love that show so much growing up, and I regret looking at it because it's
so bad.
Oh, like even the when he's flying, it's literally some guy sitting there going, like you can hear it.
Have you seen the old MacGyver recently?
Oh,
it's not good. And that show was my life growing up.
Oh,
and it's not good.
There's very few shows that have like really held up. Like Chips held up.
Quantum Leap is still one of my favorite shows.
Oh yeah, Quantum Leap is great.
It's a great show. But yeah, I started watching MacGyver and Quantum Leap again at the same time. It's like, oh my god, MacGyver's so bad.
Or like a Hulk. I bought all these Hulk videos, the original Hulk, with what's his name? Yeah, Ferrigno. And I got the Sasquatch one. I was like, telling my kids, I was like, this is the greatest battle of all time. And it's literally when he throws something, when the $6 Million Man throws something, there's some guy that goes, I can't whistle. I'm not a good whistler. So he whistles. You hear this, and then you hear this, and it's like,
it's amazing.
That's the worst sound effects ever. But I mean, it's just such a great story. Seeing, what was that, Andre the Giant wrapped in like bear fur?
Oh, you're talking about the $6 Million Man, not the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of those things. If you show it to someone now, they think it's a joke.
Yeah.
Like, no. This was one of the most popular television shows on TV at the time. That everyone thought this was amazing.
Oh, I mean, all those. Like, remember they had the $6 Million dog, and then the woman.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't she like? She was a couple million less or something like that. I don't know if she was 6 million or. I thought she was a different monetary number. I forget. But I was telling all my kids, I was like, my kids and my wife, I was like, I had this $6 Million Man doll, and you could look through his head, and they're like, Dad, this is the stupidest thing you ever said in your life. Just stop talking about it. You're such a nerd. And I'm like, if I still had that doll, though, they'd be thanking me.
It makes you wonder, what are they going to say 30 years from now when kids are watching The Avengers? Are they going to say, this is so stupid? Or have we reached the point where it's going to extend further? I don't know.
It's amazing to me because those movies are so realistic.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's just insane. Like to think, like I grew up watching the Spider-Man cartoons and the Super Friends.
Yep.
And now you're seeing this like on TV, and it looks so real, and it's just amazing. My kids take it for granted. They're like, "This is ridiculous. It's stupid." And I'm like, "This is the greatest thing in the world."
It is.
I was like, I've read all these.
When you go back and you watch movies from, say, the late 70s at the earliest, but really the 80s is when they started hitting their stride with how to shoot things, how to light things, things have aged better. Like if you go back and watch Back to the Future, it's still an all-time classic.
I agree.
If you go back and you watch something from 1960, if it's in black and white, it just does not translate to the new generation. It's just they figured something out with the way they shot movies around the 70s that.
And it is about when the Back to Future thing started happening. It seems like it's when
those movies still hold up. But yeah, you go into the 70s and you're trying to show a kid who's 12. They're like, "What are you showing me?"
I tried to watch one House. Do you remember House?
Oh, that Greatest American Hero. What was his name?
Yeah.
He's the star of it.
Jim Cat or John something Cat.
Cat, yes, Cat something. You're right.
But that movie's a great movie. But
it is. I really like it, but it's cheesy.
The Creature Lady is clearly a rubber suit.
It's bad.
I mean, the worst like makeup job ever.
Yeah, it's great stuff. All right, man. I gotta let you get the hell out of here. But it was great finding another bad movie connoisseur.
I appreciate you having me back on.
Yeah, good luck with the releases, and you got something else coming out. Let me know.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Anything you want to plug? Facebook, Twitter, newsletter?
Check me out on kennethwkane.com. Keep up with me. I have a newsletter there. You could get a free copy of Jade, my novella.
Nice. Actually, I think I'll sign up for that. I would like that.
Awesome.
All right, man. Good talking to you.
All right, you too, man. Thanks.